Hello and welcome to our program today. We are here today with Sheila Heen, and we are on the Believe Show. So let me tell you a few things about Sheila before we get started. So first thing that I want to tell you about is that she is a founder of Triad Consulting Group. She is a longtime faculty at Harvard Law School, and she's the co-author of 2 New York Times best-selling books. And I want to show you these because one of them has a superb subtitle. One of the books is, you know what I'm about to say. One of the books is Difficult Conversations, How to Discuss What Matters Most. And the second is Thanks for the Feedback, The Science and Art of Receiving Feedback. And please take a look down here. You can't quite see it, but you can see it when you go to Amazon. The Science and Art of Receiving Feedback well, even when it is off base, unfair, poorly delivered, and frankly, you're not in the mood. Welcome, Sheila. Delighted to have you here.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
That's got to be one of the best subtitles of all time, really.
Well, the subtitle and the title of the book, Thanks for the Feedback, is really intended to capture our ambivalent relationship with feedback, and partly the journey from thanks for the feedback, go away, to genuinely actually thank you for the feedback, right? That I actually took something valuable from it, even though it was mostly wrong. And so I think that as my co-author Doug and I wrestled with the feedback book, part of what cracked the code on the voice of the book was capturing sort of those snide asides that really reflect our conflicted feelings about it.
That makes sense, because in the book, you're constantly having the person speak to themselves, to their inner voice, and just these terms that you might not really hear, but you do hear sometimes, and you certainly hear on TV, and you think, oh my gosh, is that what's going to be said to me?
Yes. And it also made the book a lot of fun to write, as you can imagine, right? So as Doug and I we have a process where we'll each be working on different chapters, and then we trade, and we don't track changes or anything. Your only job is to make it better, but partly you're writing knowing that your writing partner is going to read it and laugh, right? So
I should do that. That's great. That's really great.
Yes, it presents some urgency, and it's also actually built-in appreciation, right? Because your partner is going to know how hard you work to try to make this part of the chapter work better, and if you can make them laugh along the way, that's a little bonus.
That's super fun as advice to co-authors. That's really, really fun. The Believe Show. What is it that you believe that others in your field may disagree with you about?
Well, if you you should be really interviewing others in the field and asking them, what does Sheila believe that is just wrong?
I like that.
You would have so many takers, so much feedback for me. I think that there is at its core a number of ways in which feedback just can't be fixed. And that flies in the face of course, all the work that we do, and the work that so many dedicated people do around trying to improve the quality of feedback conversations in organizations. And I think we kind of vacillate between feeling like, gosh, our feedback system doesn't work, our process doesn't work, it takes a huge amount of time and energy. People feel like it's not really accomplishing the goals it needs to accomplish, or they're not accurate, or they're demotivating people. And so we think, well, the system needs to be fixed. So we get a whole new system, and then we still struggle, and then we sort of swing the other direction and go like, well, it must be the people who are broken. If it's not the system that's broken, it's the people that are broken. So let's fix the people. So we'll do a whole bunch of training, especially for the givers of feedback. And it's just going to be an imperfect system no matter what.
So what do you mean specifically by those words, feedback can't be fixed?
I think part of what I mean is that receiving feedback really sits at the intersection of a couple of core human needs. And this has helped me understand my own conflicted relationship with the feedback that I get, which is, on the one hand, we really do want to learn and grow, right? And when people tell us feedback is a gift, we think ourselves, right, but I did not ask for a gift from you. That is an unsolicited gift, and I would like to return this gift, please. A gift receipt. So that we think, well, in some cases, actually, I am grateful for feedback, right? In some cases, I actually do have a reaction of sort of, wow, that's so interesting, that's so helpful, thank you so much. But then we bump into this other core human need, which is the need to be accepted and respected the way we are now. And I think that feedback from the people around us, formal or informal, direct or indirect, because a lot of the feedback in your environment are signals from other people about how you're impacting them, and unsolicited little tips and suggestions that you resent. And I think that feedback can actually also be among the most painful things in our lives. And so I think that there's a contradiction, or there's a tension there between wanting to learn and grow, and that's part of what the research in happiness shows makes life satisfying, and yet that particular piece of feedback from you, no thank you.
So you've written this book on how to give, receive feedback, but you're also telling me it just can't be fixed. And the part that I'm hearing you say is the emotional weight and even burden of feedback. Just, you can't really get rid of that. Is that right?
I think that you can't get rid of the struggle.
Yeah.
And so I think that because somehow we think we can get rid of the struggle, or we're trying to help people focus on the good parts, like the gift part of it or the value of it, and it really does play a central role in our working relationships, our ability to adapt to change, our ability to constantly improve what we're offering and what we're doing together. It sits at the heart of so much of what we need to be able to do together to reach our goals. But somehow pretending that it's not hard and painful and contradictory leads us to make a couple of mistakes. So one mistake I see myself making is that I become like a defender of the system, right? I explain to everybody why this is going to be great and it's really important, and whatever your objections are, you need to get over them. And so I become like a cheerleader for the system. And HR ends up getting cast as sort of the cheerleader or defender of the system. And I actually think we're better off as leaders just saying, look, the system is not, there is no perfect system. If there was, we would have bought it, I promise. So there are better and worse fits in terms of how we're going to approach feedback, but it's never going to be perfect. So let's like relax on that front. There are some drawbacks. And then the question is, how do we manage those drawbacks together?
So a little bit what I'm hearing you say is something that I do as an executive coach and our coaches do, which is letting people know that something is going to be uncomfortable.
It's going to be uncomfortable. It's also going to occasionally produce problematic outcomes. Like, let's imagine we have a forced curve.
Mm-hmm.
I can only give out so many, whatever, exceeds expectations, whatever your rating system is, for instance. Well, then if it punishes people who have worked really hard to have all A players, right? And so just saying, look, I totally understand that, and let's figure out how to manage that, rather than, no, the forced curve is the right thing to do. Or if you don't have one, right, then you end up with people getting inflated ratings sometimes, rather than us having a hard conversation.
Yeah. So this is my favorite kind of belief show, where you're saying, look, I've written about this, lots about this, and it still can't be fixed. So given this, Sheila, what should people do to fix it?
Yeah, I think you should give up and go home. No.
Everyone across the board, corporate, individual, as parenting, stop giving feedback.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that actually just being transparent about that struggle and being in it together is the key. And so this is really the shift that I've made in my own understanding of feedback, because I think we spent at least 10 years on the front end focused on teaching givers how to give and be more clear and more skillful. And the implicit assumption there is, well, gosh, if you're really skillful and really clear and really committed, well, then your feedback conversations will go well. And all you have to do is have a few of them to realize that that is not a guarantee.
This is so honest with you, because just at a human level, I feel that too. Even anything, again, I mentioned parenting, but feedback to kids, feedback to colleagues, to people that you report to, just all of it.
All of it. And also, you know, we would give everybody all of this great coaching, and then we would leave and we would come back a few months later and say, like, how are those feedback conversations going? And they'd be like, well, some of them went really well, but yeah, and others, it wasn't even worth the effort, right? Like, nothing has really changed. I thought we had a really good conversation, but then apparently we didn't understand each other or something. And so I think the change for me, the evolution for me, was really moving from focusing on givers to focusing on the challenge of receiving. And why is it so hard for all of us to take in the signals and feedback we get from the other people in our lives about the ways that we're impacting them? Because if I can understand what's so challenging about receiving, and I can become a better receiver myself as a leader, then I actually can have more honest and meaningful conversations with the people around me, because I can anticipate their triggered reaction and I can say, look, this is probably not 100% right, but there's something here that I can see that's not working, and I'm worried about the impact it's having on the team or the impact it's having on the work that you're doing. And it's going to take both of us to sort it out. That is a joint endeavor, both as a giver and a receiver. And it could be something I'm contributing to the problem. So in every conversation where I think I'm the giver, I'm probably also the receiver, which is annoying, but probably realistic.
Oh, people.
So I actually have I've become convinced that leaders becoming better receivers is really the fastest way to change a feedback culture and to change the quality of those conversations, because it's really going to take both of us in dialogue to tease out what's valuable about the coaching I'm trying to offer you as your leader. Or what does this rating signify, mean? How do we change it over time? And also, how do I offer enough appreciation for people to really feel seen and valued in my organization, which is having enough appreciation is part of what makes people more open to coaching.
What is something that you've seen go really well? What's a story either at a client of yours or in your own experience where being a receiver has gone really well?
Well, one of the things that I've really been amazed by is, so we didn't come up with this distinction, by the way. It comes from a book called Getting It Done, not the David Allen Getting It Done, but Roger Fisher, Alan Sharp, and John Richardson Getting It Done. And it talks about 3 different types of feedback. So we toss around this word feedback, but there are 3 kinds: appreciation, like making people feel seen; coaching, here's how we could improve together, something could change that would make it better, more effective, etc. And evaluation, which rates or ranks, how are you doing, are you on track, which is obviously ratings. And one of the things that we have started doing with organizations and teams is having people understand those 3 distinctions, understand that actually we each need all 3 kinds of feedback in order to learn and grow over time. And they don't all have to come from the leader. So having people on a team do a self-evaluation, like a snapshot. How much appreciation do you feel like you're currently getting on this team? How much coaching are you getting? And how clear are you on where you stand? And rate or rank each of those. And it's a snapshot in time, might be different next week. But talking about it, and then talking about, well, what kind of feedback would you like more of? And talking about that as a team actually creates permission on the team for other people to offer you coaching, so that it's coming from your peers, it's coming from your subordinates, and it's a way for everybody to feel a lot more agency and efficacy. Like, you don't have to wait around for the perfect mentor or leader to show up. If you become a better receiver, you can ask for the kind of feedback you're short on, and you can take charge of your learning and accelerate your growth. So to me, that's also been really empowering. And I've watched teams and team members have conversations that have really opened up feedback conversations in all directions.
Yeah, I think what's really cool about this is you're normalizing the discomfort.
Yeah, the discomfort, and also the it's a way to invite everyone to support each other in a way that actually feels more comfortable sometimes.
And in a way that they want to be supported.
In a way that they want to be supported. And also, like, I suddenly have permission to say to you, you know what, here's one thing that if you changed it would make a big difference to me in terms of my ability to pick up what you're handing me. And turn it around the way that you want it to be turned around. So it's opening up some things that I may have been holding in about how we're working together that have been frustrating or creating some transaction costs between us. And that actually makes it more comfortable for us to work together, because being in a working relationship where nothing is a big deal, because this is just how we operate day in and day out, is actually so much more relaxing. So it's not that the pain totally goes away for the big things, but for the little things, they become much easier.
Which is great, because then they don't grow into big things.
Exactly. Yeah, that seems right.
Let me ask the people who are with us today. So as you're with us today and you're listening to Sheila and you're hearing her talk about these 3 types of feedback, what is an action that you can take away and yet that you're going to try? Whether it's something you'll do, or something you'll invite your team to do, or you'll play around with your family. What is something that you're going to try? Let us know in the comments. Sheila, as people are typing things in, and we'll come back to that later, when you think of this whole bundle of discomfort and this struggle, and especially the receiving feedback part, what's one thing that people can, not the only thing, but what's one thing that people can take away from this, so that they, as they're entering a feedback situation, either receiving or giving, they keep it in mind, almost like a framework or like a lens through which they look?
So I'll give you 2 things, because it's a bonus. The first is that the triggered reaction that you have when feedback is incoming, which, by the way, we all have, like, is this true? Who's it coming from? Do I even like them or trust them? Which is a relationship trigger. Or like, what does this say about me? Those are the 3 kinds of triggers. The key is to not let that triggered reaction be the end of the story. It should be the beginning of the story. So you want to, when feedback is incoming, your first job is not to decide whether you agree or disagree with it, which is our instinct. Like, is this true and right, or can I safely dismiss it and move on with my life? I think that the key is having that triggered reaction be the beginning of the story, and I first have to understand the feedback. Then I can decide later what to do with it, and it's rarely going to be 100% right or 100% wrong. So I'm listening for that 10% that might be right, even as I can list, 9 out of 10 things that are wrong with it. And so it's shifting that mindset from, I have to decide now, agree or disagree, and secondly, deciding, working to understand it, asking a bunch of follow-up questions about what you're trying to tell me, what you mean, and what you're suggesting, before I then decide what I want to experiment with. Because I'm in charge as the receiver. I get to decide what I'm going to do with it, or the story I'm going to tell about you tonight when I complain about you. But maybe there is something of value there, and it's that sifting process that is key. And the last thing I would say is, you asked what's one thing people can take away, and that's what I would say people should take away, which is the question, what's one thing?
Really? Say more, please.
When we ask others for feedback, often we'll say, hey, do you have any feedback for me? And the easiest answer to that is like, no, you're great, right? Especially in hierarchy. People aren't going to be honest or take that risk necessarily. And so what we suggest is actually changing the question. And the question that I've had the most success with is, what's one thing? What's one thing that if I changed it would make a difference? And you can use, it's a super fast question. Like, I don't think better feedback conversations are about more 30-minute meetings. I think they're more about simple practices that, as we finish this meeting, I can say to somebody, hey, while walking down the hall, remember when we used to walk down the hall together? Walking down the hall.
Okay. Yeah.
What's one thing that if we change it would make next week's meeting better? Or, I'm sending you this draft. What's one thing that next time I send you a first draft would be helpful? It's really clear that I'm asking for coaching. I'm lowering the stakes. It's just one thing. It's not a big deal. And anything that comes to you off the top of your head is fine. And that starts to create a relationship between us where I welcome suggestions. I'm not promising I will take them, but I'm curious about them.
And does that even apply to, what format would you invite that in? Over the phone, over Zoom, or over email? In what format? Any?
Yes.
Okay.
Any. Yeah. I think that when it's over email, sometimes it feels like a bigger deal. Like, sit down, really think, and draft the right answer. So I tend to think that informal, over the phone or chat is sometimes helpful. And it's okay if the person says, like, gosh, I don't know, I need to think about it. That's totally fine. Say, great, I'll circle back to you. And any quick thought is fine. So the more informal you can make it, especially at the beginning, the better, because people are testing out how honest you want them to be and whether you have a positive reaction to it. And what I'm trying to do is change what's discussable between us so that we can help each other and support each other to get better and better as we work together.
Mm-hmm. And so of your two suggestions, the first one is don't get trapped in any of those truth trigger, relationship trigger, identity trigger, but specifically know that there's going to be 10% that might be useful. So just look for that. And your second thing is listen for the one thing, because you can't take 10 things out of feedback. It's just not going to be as valuable for you.
Listen for the one thing and ask for the one thing.
Ask for the one thing. That's right. Just listen. Yeah. The distinction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then this is our concluding question. What if you could snap your fingers and almost everyone in the world were to take one action? What would you want that to be?
Oh, golly. Right now, maybe listen for the 10% that might be right or legitimate about what the other side has to say right now. Whatever other side is the hardest for you to listen to and coexist with. And I say that as someone who lives in a split political household. And family, larger family. So it's hard to listen to some of what seems crazy to me. And so if we could each actually listen for a 10% that might be right or legitimate. I disagree with how you're playing it out or how you think we should fix it, but actually what you're worried about. I can see that might be worth worrying about. I think it would really change the dialogue that we have privately and ideally publicly in the public discourse, although that's got a whole nother set of systemic issues going on.
But still, I mean, what you're talking about is one-on-one conversations that lead to the same values or the same common ground, whatever that common ground may be.
Yeah, or lead to me being able to empathetically say, oh, I can see why you see it that way. I see why we see it differently now. I still don't agree, but I understand in a much more empathetic way where you're coming from. Yeah, it's a big ask, actually.
Of people, that's right. So go out and have those difficult conversations where actually it combines both your books, have those difficult conversations where you have the burden on you to listen for the 10%. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Let's see what people do. Sheila, thank you so very much. Thank you so much.
It's been such a pleasure. And good luck. When do we snap our fingers? Does that happen now so that it just happens? Yeah.
1, 2, 3.